I know that a lot of you already photograph models or want to photograph models. Some of you say that you have a really hard time finding them. Others don't really know how to pick them. And a lot of you really don't know what is reasonable to expect from a model. So let's try and solve some problems, shall we? Stay tuned. Oh, wait, pay attention. New last frame intro in 3, 2, 1. Holy bokeh balls, Batman. How are you, gang? I am Joe Edelman, and I am your host for The Last Frame Live. As always, my mission is to help photographers like you to develop a better understanding of the hows and whys behind great photography. As always, thanks for joining me. We got a bunch of people here already, a bunch of people coming in. So do me a favor, you know the drill. Check in that live chat. Let me know you're here and let me know where you're from. And if you're watching this on replay, no problem. Leave a comment down below. Let me know you're here and where you're tuning in from. And I really want to make this a conversation, gang. So the topic tonight, photographing models. What makes a great model? And how do you find them? So if you have suggestions, if you have tips, more importantly, if you have struggles, because I'll give you a little warning. It is impossible for me or anyone to tell you exactly what a great model is. I think you kind of already know why, but I promise I'll outline that. So if you have questions, problems, struggles, let me know, but let me dig in because I'm going to try and give you a brain dump here. All right. So let's start with the whole thing of what makes a great model. So hopefully it goes without saying, which of course means that I'm going to say it, right? Part of the biggest determination of what makes a great model for you or for me or for the next person, it's that crazy old quote that we've all heard. It's cheesy, but it's been around forever. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So you might like one model. I may not like that model. I might like a different model. And it's strictly based on personal taste, and that's okay. So let's be really clear. In no way, shape, or form am I trying to create some detailed list that tells you this is what your taste should be. But as always, you know what I'm going to try and do? I'm going to try and get you to think outside of your reality, maybe put you in the model shoes, or better yet, really what my focus is tonight, is I want to put you in the shoes of the people who are going to look at your photographs. You know, the people that you want to look at your pictures and say, wow, that's amazing. Those people. Because believe it or not, while no other person is going to have the same experience with that model or with your photograph as you did, because you were there, you took the picture, there are still a lot of opportunities for you to actually control, or shall we say, guide the experience of the person viewing the picture so that you can help ensure that they will see the same things and respond to the same things that you did. Now, a lot of the big questions that I get, and by all means, if you've got questions or frustrations, start typing. But the big ones that I always get are, how do we know who's going to be a good model? Like, are there specific features, Joe? Are there specific personality traits? I get those questions all the time. Does a model have to be tall? Can a model be short? Does a model have to be skinny? Can a model be curvy? All of those questions. We're going to deal with each of those. Also, how do you find these models? Now, this is something I've actually talked about a lot in the course of answering questions, but since it's our topic tonight, I will address it in a slightly different way. I don't think I'm going to give you any deep insights into new places to find models, but I am going to try and give you some insights into some little tips and tricks for kind of figuring out if that model that you're finding online, or for that matter that you're about to approach in person, if that model is actually going to meet your criteria of what you actually look for in a model. Because folks, I hate to tell you, if you haven't figured this out already, it's a lot more than just the way they look, right? There's a whole personality element involved, not just in terms of you having to work with them and put up with them, but in terms of them being able to give you the emotion and the expressions and the character that you're after to get your shot. In other words, are they a good and confident collaborator? Which, by the way, if you're not a confident collaborator, makes it hard for your model to be a confident collaborator, right? So one of the things that I would like to do, I would like to start, if you'll indulge me, I want to start with some things that are kind of my recommendations. So let's be clear, these are no rules because there are no rules, but these are the guidelines that are priority items for me in terms of do's and don'ts when looking to photograph a model. And some of you are going to be thinking, or say it, or somebody will type it inevitably, well, Joe, you've been doing it for so long, it's easy for you to say these things that I'm about to tell you. That's not the case. I've been doing it for so long, so it's easy for me to work with models in general. The suggestions that I'm going to give you are just as easy if you're new to modeling than if you've been doing it for ages. Either way, they require effort. It's just that simple. So first things first, one of the most common things that I see new and young photographers doing when they start working with models is that they expect, mainly because of what we see in America's Next Top Model and what we see in the movies, they expect that the model is the one that is going to step in front of the camera and the photographer is going to say, okay, go. And just kind of sit back and watch, and the model is going to perform, and the photographer is going to take lots of cool pictures. Sadly, we see that in YouTube videos, we see that in movies and television, we see it in reality television show. And by the way, before any of you give any credence to America's Next Top Model, please, and I know there is one YouTuber that's been kind of really tearing America's Next Top Model apart every week and going back through old episodes. But look, here's the simple reality. How many top models have there been from America's Next Top Model? That would be 0. Now, let me let you in on a light bulb moment for many of you. The understanding of why there was never a top model from America's Next Top Model. It's an extremely simple concept. Extremely simple. What company? Imagine you owned a big company, your brand, your advertising, and your image around that company. What company wants to have a model represent them who has just spent 13 or so weeks on television acting like an imbecile, behaving inappropriately, acting immaturely? Who wants that person? That's why you have never seen a top model from America's Next Top Model. Have there been some that have gone on and done some work? Sure, there have. There's been some that have gone on and done some work under different names. There are some that have gone on and done some work by changing their looks. But there's been no, shall we say, Kelly Clarkson of America's Next Top Model or Carrie Underwood of America's Next Top Model. It's a reality TV show. That doesn't mean it's real. So let's take that right off the top. It is not your model's job to perform 99% of the time. Are there some little exceptions? Yes, we'll get to those. Okay. Other things, just because you are, and I do not mean this in an inappropriate way, gentlemen or ladies, but just because you find this model attractive, I don't mean like you're going to make a pass at them. Hopefully we don't have to deal with any of that stuff, right? We're just talking about photographing, but you find them attractive. Obviously, if you find someone attractive, well, then there's an interest. It's easier to see beauty in your subject. That's human. That is strictly human. But here's the thing. Just because we see the person as attractive doesn't mean that the person will necessarily photograph well or photograph in a beautiful way. The reason for that is when we meet someone, when we talk to someone, when we're looking at them, we are also being influenced by our brains the conversations that we're having, the experiences that we're having. That aspect of that person is extremely hard to translate into a photograph. Because, of course, as we all know, once that photograph is made, when you go click, any flaws, any problems are baked in forever, permanently. Now, certainly you can change things, or I hate to say fix, but you can alter things in Photoshop. But if you don't, remember, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Not everyone will have the actual experience with that person. They only have a visual experience. And there's actually very clear science behind how our brains determine beauty. Much of what we find beautiful, it's predetermined. It's hardwired into our brains. Certainly, we do have taste that is our own, that will vary from one person to the next. But the fact is, it is partly hardwired. So it's kind of one of those things, once somebody sees it, they can never unsee it if it exists in the photograph. So that's a challenge, okay? So I know you all want some tips. So let me jump ahead a little bit. I'm going to bounce around a little bit in this conversation because there's a bunch of things that I want to really get at. So since I know some of you want tips and you want something that you can walk away from this conversation with and use, and let's see, we're about 11 minutes in. So let me give you a couple tips. If you're looking for a model's face, so I'm not going to talk about body types. Let me be really clear. I'm not one of those people who insists that a model has to be skinny. I actually do not like underweight models. And by the way, when I'm talking about weight in this conversation, so full disclosure, before anybody starts on me, now live or later in the comments, any comments I make about weight are based on what is considered to be medically healthy. That's it. Let's be really clear, okay? So for me, I prefer a model who is considered to be medically healthy, proper weight. I prefer that model because we're talking about ideal body proportions. And also, to be clear, I'm making that reference for both men and women. Now, of course, there are exceptions. If I need a fitness model, well, then I need somebody whose weight is probably going to be considerably more than their body proportions, but it's muscle and it is toned and there's definition, there's a skill set. Same goes with men, etc. But the things that you should be considering and how they're going to translate in your photograph, aside from the weight, talking just about the face, two most important things, eyes and lips. Secondary to the eyes and the lips are the nose, the jaw, and the space between the nose and the mouth. So let's break it down. Fact of the matter is, biology here, no human being is symmetrical. If you ever meet a symmetrical human being, completely symmetrical, perfectly symmetrical, that would be a good time to run, not walk in the other direction because the aliens, they're here. It's over, okay? There are no symmetrical human beings. There are some that come close, but there are no symmetrical human beings. But here's why that's an issue. Our brains, science has proven to us over and over and over again, we are hardwired. The number one marker in our minds for determining beauty in anything, in buildings, in scenery, in people, it's symmetry. Human brains love symmetry, balance. It's because it makes it easy. Really, it does. So when we're looking at the eyes, we're looking at, is one eye dramatically bigger than the other? One eye will always be larger than the other, but is one eye dramatically bigger than the other? If there is a substantial difference between the two eyes, are you okay with doing the shot where you are putting the smaller eye closer to the camera to try and balance things out? If you don't know what I'm talking about there, let me just get you the video here. We'll switch over really quick. And you want to watch this video right here, how to find the good side of, whoops, not the image. We need the video link here. Sorry, copy link address. How to find the good side of a person's face for a portrait. Okay. I will also add that into the notes below the video so that it's there. That will explain all that to save me going into that now. But number one, so the eyes are a big factor. Also, you know, it's worth considering, are you looking for a specific eye color. You know, a lot of times in my beauty shots, if you look close, I've worked blue eyes into blue backgrounds, blue accessories, things like that, blue gels, okay? So those are considerations. With the lips, here's the one thing very, very few people talk about. Very few people talk about. And even modeling agencies don't talk about it, but yet they do it, but they don't seem to be aware that they do it. The fact of the matter is, just like women go out and they get fillers and they get plumpers and they even get implants, we like big lips. We, humans, like big lips. And by the way, these features that I'm telling you about, gang, don't take my word for it. Seriously, I'm some dude on YouTube. Why should you listen to me? Start looking at advertising. Start looking at the pictures that you see in ads. And look, there are always exceptions. And by the way, if it's an actor or actress in the ad, that doesn't count. They were hired because of their celebrity. So I'm talking straight up about models in advertising and fashion magazines. Well-balanced eyes, and big lips. Well-balanced lips, okay? So the fact of the matter is, you hear me talk all the time, don't tell your subjects to cheese. Don't tell your subjects to smile. The reason for that? If you've got a subject who has a small upper lip, and don't take my word for it, you can do it yourself in a mirror. Guys, you're no different. It happens to you too. If you go cheese, your upper lip rolls under and it gets thinner, right? So there is no reason, excuse me one second here. Hey, is a professional photographer banned from the chat? Not that I'm aware of, MIB Pro 3030. I'd like to know what defines professional, but that's fine. So if they haven't misbehaved, they're not banned. If they misbehaved, they might be banned. So lips. You don't tell your subject to smile. You don't tell your subject to do cheese. And part of the way you make sure that you can do a whole variety of expressions and not have to be worried about that upper lip is to work with a subject that has full lips. So that way, if they do start that smile or they do get a big smile, you still have a lot of lip to work with. And you're not having to add it back in Photoshop. Yes, the new liquefy tools in Photoshop actually work incredibly well, but they are not going to build a lip where there is no lip. They're just not. Now, I talked about the chin, right? So some people, depending on the shape of their face, and by the way, none of these makes a person more beautiful or less beautiful. It's all about your taste. But I'm giving you guidelines in terms of what photographs well based on the concept of symmetry and balance in a face, right? So jawlines and chins. Certainly, people from Eastern European descent tend to have a broader jawline and it's a little squarer and indeed very dramatic. If you want to have a makeup artist do contouring or if you want to do dramatic lighting, Eastern European jawlines, like hands down, the way to go. Okay, totally. So, but that also being said, you could have a model with a great jawline, great definition, great cheeks, which, by the way, you notice I didn't mention cheeks, and that's because you can actually kind of create cheeks with makeup. But you can have those features and then wind up with what becomes a really pointy jaw. So the challenge there is if you let that model drop the chin, or if you shoot them from above, you wind up creating a really pointy V-shaped jawline, which if you are trying to do something specifically with that feature set, then bingo, that's the kind of model you need. Otherwise, it limits you in the camera angles that you can work with. Another thing that is good to have is balance. Balance between the top and the bottom, okay? Meaning, you know, the chin, obviously, space should be a little bit deeper than, you know, what's between the nose and the lips. But at the same time, you don't want to have no space. Because if you have no space between the lips and the nose, if you dip that head ever so slightly, visually, the tip of the nose touches the mouth. And it actually makes the nose look bigger. It's kind of like an optical illusion. The moment the tip of the nose touches the mouth visually, it makes the nose look bigger. And it goes without saying, I left out the nose altogether. Certainly, if a person's got a crooked nose or that type of thing, you know, that's a factor. But I should have mentioned that. My apologies, right? So those are facial features that if you're looking for those things, especially if you want to do close-ups. Now, I'm using my photography, kind of as a reference here. Let's switch over. You guys know that I do a whole bunch of really, really tight close-ups. Oh, by the way, really quick, if you haven't listened to last week's TOGCHAT, yes, a little commercial, 30 seconds. If you haven't listened to last week's TOGCHAT, trust me, please listen to it. I don't care if you are working professionally, think of working professionally, or for that matter, honestly, just wanting to work with models. The conversation with Tracie Maglosky, it's all about newborns and maternity. So a lot of you are thinking, he just said work with models. What did it have to do with anything? Listen closely to this conversation and pay attention. So much of what Tracie talks about in interacting with clients, establishing expertise and authority, and making a client comfortable, so much of it applies to working with models, okay? So it is excellent information all across the board. So make sure you check it out. So going back, just as an example, which I'm not saying you should take your pictures this way. Let's be really clear. But part of the reasons why I am so aware of these things I'm mentioning, notice how close I photograph the person's face, right? This is kind of a long shot for me. This is, the face actually taking up a much smaller part of the image. Otherwise, I usually tend to do these types of things. And by the way, this image is not flipped. There's no Photoshop magic. This is this young woman's face. So you can see, obviously, great eyes, well-balanced, great nose, great lips. The jawline right here, or the chin space, it's a little short for my taste in a perfect world. But she's gorgeous. She's beautiful. I love the shot. This has been one of the shots that kind of defines my work and my portfolio. But ideally, I'd love to have just a tiny little bit more space. That's my taste. The reason I'm pointing these things out to you is you don't have to agree with my taste. You should agree with your own taste, but you should be paying attention to these things. Because once again, when you meet a model, especially I know so many of you still go to these shootouts where, there's like 7 or 8 other photographers and there's a bunch of models and makeup artists and it's just chaos and everybody's shooting over everybody's shoulder. Oh, crap. You know how I feel about that stuff. But the fact of the matter is, those are the perfect example. You go to those scenarios and it's easy to become really kind of engaged with the models and really like the models because you've got that interaction. There's usually a lot of jawing going on and people are talking and having a good time. So it's really easy to kind of make a connection with that model. So they're fun to photograph. And then you come back and you look at your images and, aside from the fact that everybody else has pictures of the exact same thing, which means your pictures honestly are worthless, because it doesn't matter if your pictures are better. You go to those group shootouts, guys, and your pictures are better than everybody else, good for you. But guess what? All those really crappy pictures devalue your pictures because they also show that it's not really your picture. It's a picture that everybody shot. There's no win in having the best version. Photography is not a competition. It's a passion to be shared, right? So again, that's the face. The body kind of works the same way. I don't have to go through every element of the body. Think about it, right? It's balance. I already mentioned symmetry. In fact, I'll give you a golden posing tip. Since all of you insist on asking me or telling me I need to learn posing. I need tips for posing, Joe. Like, how do I learn poses for models? Don't learn poses for models. I don't have any poses memorized. I don't, I swear. After all the years I've done posing, are there a couple poses that kind of come up more often than others in my head? Yes, I'm human, of course. That's just a repetition thing. But one of the greatest things that you can do for posing, number one, whatever you have your model do, find a way to make it relaxed. Even if it's drama, once she's in that pose, she's got to be able to kind of own it, which means relax. But two, if you're worried about where do things go and how do we place it, imagine yourself, since you can't see all of me and I can't back up far enough, imagine yourself just standing with your feet together and arms at your side. If you go and look in a mirror, you will notice that we could draw a whole bunch of parallel lines. We can draw parallel lines through your shoulders, through your elbows, through your hip bones, through your knees, through your ankles. and generally through your wrists. Okay? They're all parallel when you stand like this. Standing like this in a picture would, of course, look very stiff. You would look really tense and uptight. Even if you're relaxed, you would look tense and uptight. It would be boring. In fact, the picture would be uncomfortable. So the best guideline, rule of thumb, if you will, this is not a rule, it's a rule of thumb. If it bends, meaning all of these joints, the wrists, the elbows, the knees, the hips, the ankles, the shoulders, all of it, if it bends, bend it. Get rid of the horizontal lines so that the lines are all kind of intersecting and going in different directions just by simply bending. So like with the legs, simply all you need to do is have the person kind of sit down on one leg, lift the other foot. That changes the height of the hip, the ankles, and the knees. Same with the hands. If you can do hands on the hip, unless you specifically want something that is completely symmetrical, hands on the hips don't work unless you stagger the height where maybe one shoulder's up and the other hand's down. So they're on different heights. And by the way, hands on the hips doesn't always have to be like this way. You know, you can take the hands and do this kind of a thing and adjust the height. So there's your posing tip for the night, even though that's not part of our topic. If it bends, bend it. Create lines that are going to intersect, that aren't parallel. Okay? So back to what are we looking for in a model? We talked about the physical stuff, right? We want a model that is essentially well-proportioned. You can have a tiny model. I mentioned, do they have to be tall? No, not at all. The majority of the models that you see on my website, even in here in the what's called the book 2 section of my website, the majority of these models that are in here are under 5'8" in height. There are a few. This young lady here is 5'8". This young lady here is 5'10". This young lady here is also, I believe, about 5'10". But most of these girls are tiny. They are petite for 5'4", 5'6", in that range. The key to it is good body proportions. By the way, since I just saw this photo, I'm going to give you one more little public service message here. If you're near North Carolina, if you can get to North Carolina at the end of next month, so next month is, a couple days away, July 31st through August 2nd, or actually July 30th through August 2nd, excuse me. The Carolina Photo Expo is coming up. And do I have it here or do I not have it here? Yep, here. I'm just on the wrong page. There is what I would like to think is an awesome lineup of instructors. Kesha Lambert, this dude, he's everywhere. Lori Nordstrom, Chad and Beth Winstead, Mary Fisk Taylor, Jordan Chan, Peggy Rogerson, Linda Packard, Aurora DeLuca, Teresa Porter, Michelle Salzman, and Jerry DeLuca, who is an attorney. Can you tell, right? Yeah. So anyway, these are the speakers. It's going to be an awesome event. In fact, I was just doing some email exchanges with the folks today. I'm basically presenting on the Saturday. So is Jordan Chan. He's presenting Saturday night. Kesha Lambert's presenting on Sunday. But Saturday is going to be like an action-packed day. I present at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. There's some stuff in the morning. I present at 1 in the afternoon, and I'm doing a program 2.5 hours. It's called Bold and Beautiful Fashion Portraits, and it's going to be part presentation, big part demo, and there will be attendees plucked out of the audience to do their first ever fashion and beauty portraits live in real time on the model that we have there. And I know who my model is now. It's a rare time that I'm working with a teenager. This is a 15-year-old young woman who is just drop dead gorgeous. I can't wait to get her in front of the camera. And then there's a trade show. Companies like Savage Universal are going to be there. Stella Pro is going to be there. In fact, I'll be using Stella Pro lights in my demos. And then Saturday night at 9 o'clock, after Jordan Chan speaks, they do a thing called shootouts, which is really cool. They take over a ballroom in the hotel. It's in Cary, North Carolina. And they set up 2 shooting bays, 2 studios. And most likely it'll be Jordan Chan since he's there. So he'll do one shooting bay. I'll do another shooting bay. And we will set up a shot and shoot it as a little demo. But then the attendees are able to step in and photograph the models and do that kind of thing. So I'm working on a kind of really high-end Game of Thrones inspired full-length fashion shot. Also going to do a beauty shot version of it that I'm pretty stoked about. I've been working with a makeup artist. We've been doing Zoom calls back and forth. It's a really, really fun event. I highly recommend it if you're able to do it. So it's July 30th through August 2nd. The bulk of the educational stuff is actually July 31st. So it's a Saturday and a Sunday. Those are the two main days. Okay. But anyway, this composite series was taken the last time that I was down at Carolina Photo Expo, as was, let me find it. There's another series with that young lady and her mom that I did at that same event. It's a lot of fun. And this was done at the shootouts at the end of the night. The shootout starts at like 9 o'clock at night and goes till about 2 a.m. in the morning. It's kind of crazy. Okay. So, we talked about physical stuff. Let's talk about personality stuff. If you want to make your job, I'm going to say if you want to make your life easier, you are going to pick a subject who is confident. Now, that becomes a challenge. So this is a little piece of social commentary. Nobody hate me. I'm just observing. Especially when you go to social media looking for models and you go to the websites like Model Mayhem, Purple Port, even when you do hashtag searches on Instagram, you have a situation kind of like with photography, right? Anybody can access that. Anybody can put that hashtag model after their name. Unfortunately, a lot of the people that do it are people, and they will tell you very honestly, they would love to do some modeling because they think it will build their confidence. There's tons of research that explains that is actually a really horrible idea. But the fact of the matter is they may be beautiful. You may want to photograph them. But that means you have to understand in advance and be tolerant of the fact that that subject is going to be really nervous. That subject is not going to be a subject that you stick in front of the camera and say, okay, go. Because if you do that, they're like, oh my God. Yes, they chose to put themselves there. Yes, it was their idea. Yes, they agreed to it, but that doesn't mean they're going to be able to do it. This is, a psychological thing. It's a confidence thing. It's anxiety. That takes all control. They don't have control of that. So if you're going to choose a subject like that, you need, as a decent human being, to be prepared to work with them and work them through it and build their confidence. So now comes the question I know, well, how do I know that, Joe? How do I know that in advance? You know that by not being lazy. You don't just find them online, send them a message, say, hey, I think you're hot. You want to shoot on Saturday? And then you set the whole thing up. You can send them a message, say, I would love to photograph you. I love this about your features. I love that about your features. I think we could do something really cool like this. Are you in? And then when they say yes, then you say, awesome. You know what? I would love to have a conversation with you so we can actually talk about it. In fact, better yet, do you mind doing a Zoom call or a FaceTime so that we can kind of, virtually meet? Now, in a perfect world and before the pandemic, I would have insisted on meeting the model in advance. So even as an example, I'm doing the Carolina Photo Expo on July 31st. That's when I will photograph my model. I will meet my model Friday evening, the 30th. I'm going to have a Zoom call with her next week. So I will virtually meet her. I will be able to sit down in front of her and have conversations with her on Friday evening. And then Saturday, I will photograph her. Okay. So I always want to be able to start to establish a relationship in advance. And again, listen to the podcast last week with Tracie Maglosky. She literally explains from a masterclass standpoint about establishing relationships with clients. Again, client is a generic word in the sense it doesn't have to be paid, but your model is a client. Okay. So if you're going to work with somebody that is not confident, if you're going to work with somebody that has anxiety or is uptight, you got to be prepared to work with them and put them at ease. But on the flip side, understand that most of the models, and there's going to be a lot of models that will hate me for this, but I'm just calling it the way it is, folks. And a lot of you have experienced it. Most of the models who tell you that, oh yeah, I can pose, I'm really confident. In fact, I'm sorry, but most of the models that the photographers who photograph amateur models love, they're not really that good at posing. They're good at moving. They move a lot. They're very confident. And don't get me wrong, these people are beautiful. These people actually could be incredibly talented models if they understood that the photographers they're working with are not that good. I'm not insulting any of you. Guess what? I'm not that good. Most photographers are not that good. What am I getting at? How many of you have ever been working with a model who poses on her own, who does things, and it's going great? You're loving it. She's confident out the wazoo. You're shooting away, and suddenly you're like, oh my God, oh, that was great. Go back, go back, go back. And she stops, and the eyes go back and forth. She's like, I don't know what I was just doing. So the fact of the matter is, you're not shooting models. You're shooting the sporting event at that point. That's what you're doing. You're shooting a sporting event. If you want to shoot a model, the community, meaning photographers in general, what we would teach these young women and young men, instead of doing what they see on America's Next Top Model, click, pose, click, pose, click, pose. Instead of doing that, what we would teach them is, okay, pose, click, 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 click. Okay, new pose, click, 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 subtle changes, small changes, and let it get to the point where the photographer then tells the model, okay, switch it up. Because if I'm doing, click, 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 and the model goes here, click, and I'm like, I don't know, put your hand back down, they know exactly where their hand just was. That's just human psychology, gang. Every one of you that photographs models and likes the models to just move on their own has missed shots and said to the model, oh, wait, go back. And that model is like, I don't know where I was. And then you're trying to describe it, and now you've just messed up with her flow, and she's annoyed at you and thinks that you suck because you messed up her flow, you missed the shot, right? That's not collaborating. It is not collaborating, gang, when you say to somebody, go, and you sit back and watch. It's just not. That's not how collaboration works, okay? So that's you sticking in front of somebody in front of the camera because you're being lazy, or you're convincing yourself. Because every time, gentlemen, especially every time that you say to yourself, well, I just don't know what to tell them. I don't know how to talk to them. I don't know how to pose them. That is a self-fulfilling prophecy. You are guaranteeing that you suck at it because what's happening is you're not actually trying. Stop thinking that you have got to, walk into that space with that model and act like you are the most amazing photographer in the world. God, if you ever came to one of my shoots, I bust on myself nonstop. I'd let the model know if I screwed something up. I let the model know if I'm stuck on an idea. I let the model know that I'm every bit as human as she is. But I also let her know, and she sees that I'm committed to working it out. That's what photography is. It's problem solving. I'm going to work through it, and we're going to find something. But she's my collaborator. She's an equal. I can't get the shot without her. I can't get it without her buy-in. I can't get it without her energy, without her good looks. So I need her to really be an active part. But if she's doing her thing and I'm doing my thing, we're just hoping that something intersects. That's just burning off a lot of digital files or a lot of film. It's like playing the lottery. Maybe you get it, maybe you don't. Like, why? There's no fun there. I mean, honestly, there's no fun there, and there's rarely good results there. Okay? So, that's a big one. We've talked about physical things. We've talked about personality. Oh, an important part of personality. Gosh, how could I forget this? Starts with you because you have to set the tone. You have to set the example. Unfortunately, so many lazy photographers, and yes, those of you that do what I'm about to describe, you're lazy. You deserve to have models flake. You deserve to have models decide, I'm going to go shoot with some other guy because the other guy actually paid more attention and put more effort into our shoot. You deserve to have these models come into your shoot and be complete and utter divas because they behave like they're doing you a big favor. You deserve it if you are the photographer that DMs a girl on Instagram or sends her a message on Facebook or maybe actually sends a message through Model Mayhem or email And basically, and we can paraphrase, but basically it's like, hey, I think you're gorgeous. I'd love to do a shoot. What are you doing this weekend? Let's shoot. And then when the girl says, yeah, sure, let's shoot, you write back and you're like, okay, like, let's do 1 o'clock. Meet me at this address and bring like 3 outfits, cool. See you then. If that's your method, you sincerely deserve to have the model flake on you. If you hate me for saying that, too bad. I've never had a model flake. Never. In all my years, ever have I had a model flake. When I travel, when I go to places like North Carolina, when I go to Vegas in August, where I'll be in August at WPPI, when I go to Austin, Texas, where I'll be in August, right after WPPI, I have to get my own models. I get my models the same way I'm about to tell you to get the models. I get them on social media. I don't use Model Mayhem or Purpleport anymore, okay? So I'm meeting these models for the first time when I arrive in that city. But they never flake. And sometimes they get paid. Quite often they don't get paid. They just get some pictures. Same as what you're trying to do. It's all in how much effort and how much detail you put in. Because part of what you need to understand, and this is why, again, listen to that podcast with Tracie Maglosky. It's not about modeling. But when she talks about her client consultation, gentlemen, everything she talks about, you should be doing with your models. Period. Hands down. The reason for going through all this detail and putting in the effort to provide them with detail and have conversations and do a Zoom call. Everybody knows how to do Zoom or FaceTime these days, which is awesome. Because I used to tell photographers, hey, look, if it's the first time you're shooting with somebody and they don't know you and all that kind of stuff, meet them at a Starbucks or meet them at McDonald's and buy them a cup of coffee, which means you're out $5 or probably more than that by now, right? I don't drink coffee, so I don't know what Starbucks costs. But the point is now you can do it for Zoom and FaceTime, and everybody's happy to do a Zoom or FaceTime because they can do it from wherever the heck they are. They can squeeze it in between things, and it's fast and it's quick and it's simple. Awesome. But you start the relationship. You allow them to see you, communicate with you, get a sense. They want a sense of who you are too. It's not just you wondering what are they like. They want a sense of what are you like? Who are you? That's going to help put them at ease. That's going to help make them more comfortable. Always put that effort in. But that also means part of finding a good model is making sure that that model is willing to put the effort in. So many of the models that you're going to come across, and I mean a lot of the models that you're going to come across, and I'm not putting down these young women. I blame the photographers they've worked with. They are not used to having to put into that effort. They literally just like, yeah, somebody wants me to shoot. Cool. Saturday, 1 o'clock. Okay, cool. I'll go. Right? You're going to deal with that. My way of dealing with that, I don't shoot with those models. So, Alnor, this is actually a very good point. So here, let me pop this up on the screen. Hey, Joe, you should talk about agency models. Usually the agent want to be the intermediary in all requirements, so it's not easy to establish connection, rely on a call sheet to communicate. So, Alnor, actually it still is, but let me explain a couple things about agency models, and then let me also explain some things that you can do to alleviate that problem, okay? So obviously I don't know exactly where you're at and I can't speak for the agency that you're dealing with, and please do not type the agency name in here. I don't want to be dumping on any agencies, but I want to give you some suggestions. So one thing I want you folks to understand about agency models, especially those of you that are shooting for fun, who are shooting for building your portfolio, please do not make the mistake of thinking that an agency model is going to make your pictures better. An agency model could make your pictures better. But I hate to tell you, even in major markets like Philadelphia, fifth largest advertising market in the United States, Philadelphia. Major markets like New York, number 1 largest advertising market. I already said Philly. Los Angeles, number 2 largest advertising market. There are agency models in those cities that look like a deer in the headlights every time they get in front of the camera. Agencies don't actually test their models. And I don't mean test shoot. I mean test their models to see, do they really have any skills? The most an agency is going to do when they sign the girls, they're going to look at a portfolio and they're going to make, some references based on that portfolio. Or they're going to send the girl out to test with a few of their photographers. And the only agencies that do that are the bigger agencies. And they're only going to do it if they are really confident that they can get that girl work and they don't like the picture she already has. That's the only time that's going to happen in today's world. So in a situation like that, obviously they're going to get feedback from those photographers she tested with, and then they'll know. But otherwise, you'd be amazed how much agencies don't know about their model's ability. And with most agencies, you are going to pay a minimum of $125 an hour with a 2-hour minimum to get that model, period, right? So if your work is amazing, and when I say amazing, I mean truly amazing, better than mine, you could potentially get yourself a deal where you're testing for the agencies, and then they're going to send models to you. But even then, at that point, the agency becomes your client. You're not getting paid necessarily. Some do, some don't. Depends on the arrangements, and it depends on how good you are. But you're likely not getting paid. The model's not getting paid. But the pictures that you take have to satisfy the agency. So if you want to do like one of my creative beauty shots, the agency's going to take one look at that and say, what the hell is this? We can't use this, right? That's what's going to happen because that doesn't go in a model's portfolio. So agency models are not really the way to go. Now, Alnor, I mentioned you said that it's not easy to establish a connection and rely on a call sheet to communicate. So here's the thing. You're right. Agencies don't like to do extra work, but it's actually easy if you're willing to put your foot down. Fortunately, I have not had to deal with agency models in about 4 years now, but for well over a decade, I worked with agency models almost exclusively on a literally day-by-day basis, and I was a pain in the butt with the agencies. Because keep in mind, the agencies weren't my client. I had a client, right? I had a client that was paying for the models. So it was really easy for me to basically, call the agency and say, listen, I need to talk to this model. I need to at least be able to communicate by email with this model in advance. And the agencies always, Alnor would say, well, just send us the details. And I'd be like, yeah, I'll send you the details because I know you want to be involved, but I need to have a conversation with the model. And I would tell them right then and there, if you want to do a 3-way call, no problem. I'm not trying to do anything underhanded, but I will have a conversation with the model, or I will recommend that my client does not hire this model. Real simple. I never had a problem. The agency at that point would usually kind of huff off and be like, but they do it. Okay. It's just, they don't want to have to do the extra work, period. Right. And yes, Alnor, if you're doing modeling portfolio images, you have to do simple images because that's what the agencies want. And Alnor, I'll give you a thought to stick in your head. And folks, I'll get away from this agency stuff after this point because I don't want to dominate this whole conversation. But Alnor, since you're working in this realm, I have a thought for you that I have often said, it'll never happen, but it's what my definition of what would be the perfect modeling portfolio. Modeling agencies will never agree to it for one reason and one reason only. They find it boring. They don't have any good reason why it won't work. They just find it boring. Modeling agencies want to be creative. And Alnor, if you're dealing with modeling agencies, I'll get myself in a lot of trouble here, but I'll say this. I've said it on record before. Pay attention to the people that are working in the modeling agencies that you're dealing with. They don't understand marketing. They don't really get it. They just love the pace and I'm a booking agent and all that stuff. And they know their clients. They provide good service. But here's the thing. What's really happening with the modeling portfolio? It's an opportunity for the client to look at the model and get a sense of what the model looks like. But what's actually happening beyond the modeling portfolio, Alnor, especially with commercial modeling, and even with fashion, but especially with commercial modeling, I'm going to use Philadelphia as an example, the city of Philadelphia. It's the largest medical advertising market in the United States. So lots of models in Philadelphia get hired to be nurses, doctors, research assistants. So you would expect that certainly at a casting, a girl could walk in, or for that matter, the portfolio gets sent to the client. And you would expect that the client can look at these 10 sets of modeling portfolios and say, ooh, this girl, if we put her hair back in a ponytail and we put her in scrubs, she would look great as a nurse. Maybe they could do that. Unfortunately, they're forced to do that. But what does the client really want? Because the client works in the corporate world. In the corporate world, they want to be able to cover their backside, CYA. So what they would rather see is a picture of the girl, with their hair in a ponytail, dressed as a nurse. Because then they can send that picture off to the boss. Even if they're in a hurry, they text it over to the boss. And the boss is like, that's exactly what I had in mind. Boom. For that person, their butt's covered, girl's hired, everybody's happy. So there's a great argument that every single modeling portfolio for agencies should actually have the exact same selection of images. You know, a headshot, a body shot, maybe a bathing suit shot, maybe a fitness shot, maybe a business shot, maybe a medical shot, depending on the market, right? And the same can be said for fashion. You can break fashion down into categories where you're dealing with, certain styles in terms of cuts and lengths, and then also certain expressions and moods. It would actually make it so much easier for clients to be able to determine if they're hiring the right person. But the other reason it'll never happen is not only do the agencies find it boring, the minute that takes place, the minute modeling portfolios become standardized, if you think about it, the clients don't really need the agencies. Somebody could build a website where they put all these portfolios online and the clients could just simply go through, boom, and there it is, right? So anyway, I digress. Let's get back to it, okay? So we've talked about the physical stuff. We've talked about kind of the emotional, the psychological stuff. Let's talk a little bit about the where because I'm running out of time, but the where is simple, and I've talked about it before. Sites like Model Mayhem are fine, but here's the problem with like Model Mayhem and Purpleport, right? You tend to get a high percentage of people that have been doing these shoots that have developed bad habits that have been taught to them by the amateur photographers that didn't teach them anything. They just said, oh, you're great all the time, right? You're actually better off going to Instagram and doing a hashtag search. So like for Austin, Texas, I'll do a hashtag search that's, hashtag Austin models or hashtag model Austin. I'll see whichever one has the most people, and then I'll go through it. And the reason why this is better is, number one, I will find people that are in modeling agencies. So if I want an agency model but don't want to deal with the agency, I can book direct. Oh, by the way, Alnor, so here, I'm going to get in big trouble for this. I'll give you guys the golden tip. I know a lot of you have probably Googled a modeling agency or gone to a modeling agency website. And by the way, if you're ever looking for modeling agencies, folks, on my website, click on the link for modeling resources, modeling agencies directory. Every agency in the United States is listed there, and it'll take you right to their website. Okay. So here, I'll put the link in the chat so that you have it. But here's a dirty trick. And I'm not kidding when I say I'm going to get in trouble for this. When I travel to these various cities, I will from time to time not find an ideal model through an Instagram hashtag search or Model Mayhem. And then, of course, if I go to a modeling agency for that city, I can find somebody that is going to meet the physical criteria that I want. But if I book them through the agency, my client, whether it be, one of my sponsors or whether it be the camera store that I'm going to, or if it's myself, if I'm doing my own workshop, I can't afford agency rates, unfortunately. So how do I get that model? Well, in a lot of cities, the modeling agencies have made a crucial error, which they may change now that I say this because somebody will point it out to them, but they've made a crucial error on their website. And that is that on their website, they have included the model's first name and last name. If they've included the model's first name and last name, it's really easy. Take that name, paste it into Instagram or Facebook. The irony of it is most of those young women, if they're on Instagram, which they will be, and if you don't know why they're on Instagram, the agencies make them go on Instagram now. The easiest way for a model to get signed by an agency is to have at least 10,000 followers. If a girl has 10,000 followers, she can almost always get signed by an agency in today's world, okay? But I type it in the search, and Instagram pops her profile, and most of the girls actually allow you access to their email. So I don't even have to DM them because these girls are gorgeous. They're getting guys dropping into their DMs all day long, right? So I don't want to get lost in the DMs. I'm going to email her, right? DM's lazy, gentlemen. It's always lazy. Email her, period, right? Even if they have like first name, last initial, I'll still try Google search, maybe go to Facebook. I've even been known to grab the image off the website and do a reverse image search on Google because obviously it'll take me right back to the website. But in all likelihood, the girl has had those images posted on her social media, or if she has her own website, and then I can get directly to the girl. So I know a lot of you thinking, wow, like that doesn't sound like Joe because he's all for doing it right. And you know what? I am cutting some corners there. I am cutting modeling agencies out, but I will make sure the girl gets paid. She's just not going to get paid as much as the agency would pay. And every one of those gigs that I do, the girls get images from the gigs. Even if my presentation doesn't necessarily work for me to be able to create something for them, I will do something before or after my presentation to get them images that they can use. So honestly, I have a clean conscience about it because I'm doing the girl a favor. And most of the time when it's my presentations, it's images that she's not really going to be able to use in her agency portfolio, and the agency won't use them, but she would love to have them to put them on social media. So it's a win. It's a win for everybody but the agency. So there, I told you, I know that I will get hate mail over that now. So my advice, honestly, is Instagram. And here's the other reason for Instagram, right? On Instagram, you find a girl when you do the hashtag search and you think, oh my God, she's like the most gorgeous thing ever. Well, if you've been using Model Mayhem or Purple Port or any of those, you've probably also experienced, you find this girl's drop dead gorgeous, you book her and she shows up. And actually, I've had this happen with guys too. They show up and they're like, oh my God, clearly every image of theirs was heavily retouched. This is not the person I was expecting. That's a problem, especially when I'm going to do presentations in front of sometimes a couple hundred people. I don't want a last minute surprise where my model does not look nearly as good as she did in her pictures. So by going to their profile, I can see all of their pictures. Their profiles frequently link over to Facebook or vice versa. And so I can go and I can look at tons of images, basically, check out their profiles to see, okay, what do they really look like? I can also get a sense of what's their personality like. I can get a sense of how confident they are. Are they really fun? Are they outgoing? I can get a sense of, am I going to be able to connect with this person? Because it's not like I have months to get to know them, right? And to build a relationship. I'm going to have minutes, maybe an hour, if that, to get to know them. And then I've got to put them in front of my camera with a whole bunch of people watching. So the more research that I can do, the better. So anyway, I know there's a couple questions here. I'm going to try and get them really quick. Sure enough, I used up pretty much the whole hour. But I would love to keep the conversation going in the comments below, or for that matter, in my Facebook group. Definitely, follow up in there. So, and I'm just scrolling back here. I thought I saw, and let's see, Cloudstrife said, I forgot your website podcast don't want to play on the iPhone via Safari, at least for you. That's interesting, Cloudstrife. Nobody has told me that. And I think, so here's the thing. I will check that out, Cloudstrife, but I honestly have a feeling that may be you. The reason I say that is I use one of the biggest podcasting hosting companies out there. It's Buzzsprout. And in all of their communities that are online, the minute there's any kind of tech issues, people report it like crazy. I've never seen a report, but I don't use Safari on my iPhone. I use Chrome. So I will double check that just to make sure there's nothing that I've done from a coding standpoint in that. So thanks for that heads up. And M, interesting topic, by the way, the advice that I gave you about changing the A200 head and using the bulb head fixed the problem. Cool. So you're able to get full coverage now on your subject. That's awesome. Really, really good. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, folks. I mean, so that was a follow-up from last week. Anytime that you're going to put a light into a softbox or even a parabolic dish for that matter, okay, if at all possible, do it with a bare bulb, right? If you can't, if the only thing you have is a speed light, which has a rectangular head, that's fine. It doesn't mean you got to rush out and buy new gear, but make sure if that speed light has a zoom head, make sure that it's zoomed to its widest setting, which is usually going to be somewhere between 17 millimeter and 24 millimeter, and make sure that it's as far away from the front diffuser as possible, which of course you're going to be limited by whatever kind of mounting ring it has in that. But that way you're going to get full coverage on the, the front of the diffuser. Okay. And And scrolling on up here, I could have sworn there was another question. And all right, so let me leave you with one last tip about finding models, because I know that, just making sure. Okay, good. I didn't miss anything else. So I know that there's a lot of people here tonight, just based on some of the comments and based on the questions and based on some of the information that was sent to me in my Facebook group and that earlier. A lot of you are still kind of in that learning curve where indeed you are nervous. You have some anxiety about directing the models and that kind of stuff. Super simple tip. Find one model that you can connect with. And I'm not talking like have a relationship with, like date. No. I just mean like you like them. They're fun. They're enjoyable to be with. They clearly like you, or in my case, tolerate you, whatever. Okay. But find somebody that you can connect with and be very honest with that person. And schedule sessions, maybe 2 or 3 hours at a time, where you bring them in front of your camera in a studio or on location, whatever you're doing, it doesn't matter. But the guidelines are, it's your practice time. Give them $20 or $25 to cover their gas and, a Starbucks on the way to or from, whatever, and promise them that you'll get them at least one picture from that day. But the reason why you're asking them to do it more than one time, and you're going to tell them, I want to do this more than one time, is that you want to be able to practice. And they are gorgeous. They are a great subject. You would like to practice with them. You would be amazed if you're honest and sincere and open. You'd be amazed how many people will be willing to do that with you, okay? So the reason why you're going to do that then is when they come in for this practice session, the first one or any of the subsequent ones, you have bought yourself, and I don't mean bought with the $20, I mean bought yourself with asking the question that way. You have bought yourself permission to do the one thing that is a cardinal sin when photographing people. You have bought yourself permission to almost ignore your subject. You have bought yourself permission to play around with your lights, to futz head down with your gear, to experiment, to try things, to literally, all the things that you should not be doing with a model. You have now given yourself permission so that you've taken that pressure off of you, that you have got to constantly be talking to them and constantly entertaining them and constantly giving them directions. So you're not doing these practice sessions to get the next epic picture for your Instagram feed. You are doing these practice sessions for you to be able to practice lighting, to be able to practice composition, to be able to practice posing and giving directions. And look, I got to tell you, I see this more and more and more and more. This is going to be my new crusade for the second half of 2021. If you are shooting with a mirrorless camera, and especially if you're shooting on location, but even if you're in a studio with strobes, if every other frame that you shoot is underexposed, or if your entire shoot of 30-some pictures is underexposed by like a stop, or worse yet, 2 or 3 stops, what the hell are you doing? You could see it was underexposed when you took the picture. Why are you taking the pictures? Why did you keep shooting? It is mind-blowing to me how many people I am asking, hey, let me see the original file so that I can help you with it. And I get the original file from them, and it's 2.5 stops underexposed. And then I ask if I can see their whole take. And they share their screen, they bring up the take. And like the entire shoot's 2.5 stops underexposed. I'm like, what's going on? Either you're not paying attention or you have a calibration problem with your camera. Fix it. You don't want it. All of you that spend all that money on full frame cameras, and then you underexpose by 2.5 stops, you're just blowing all the quality, all that extra quality that you spent thousands of dollars for. You're just blowing it away because you're going to have to bring up the shadows in your shot. And what does that do? Exaggerates the noise. So practice. Even with models, practice. Be very honest with the model and arrange time for practice. Guys, if you really pay attention to my work, through my videos, you'll notice there have been 2 models in the time that I've been doing YouTube. There have been 2 models that are kind of my practice models. I work with them all the time. Monet, my makeup artist, the young black woman who is gorgeous, who's in so many of my beauty shots. And another young woman, Alexa, she's the cover shot from the videos on how to handle hands. Okay? They're both local models. They love getting in front of the camera. They're gorgeous. I love their faces. I love their personality. I can put them in front of the camera and I know that they're going to be easy to work with. So when I'm experimenting and trying things, I work with one of them to do it. For the next couple of weeks before I go to North Carolina, it's been almost 2 years since I've presented live, almost a year and 3/4. So I will spend the next couple of weeks experimenting with my mannequin because this is also going to be the first time I'm doing my presentations with LED lights instead of strobes. So I will spend the next couple of weeks practicing, figuring out what I'm going to do. And then right before I leave for North Carolina, I'll do 1 or 2 afternoons with a model in front of my camera, practicing the same things I've been practicing with the mannequin. And they will be told, like, this is why you're here. This is what I'm doing it for. I'll pay them a little bit of money. And I will spend quite a bit of that 2 or 3 hours not talking to them. But I will be working on doing what I want to do. Okay? So anyway, Alvin, are they brightening up the screen so much that it looks good on the screen? That's a very possible likelihood. Next week, gang, I'm not saying it won't be the topic of the last frame, but next week, I'll give you guys a little tip for getting your camera and your computer kind of in sync on brightness without having to spend money on calibration tools and all that kind of stuff, which, by the way, if you really care about your work, you should be doing calibrating. But even me, I don't do camera calibration. I only do monitor calibration, right? So, but I still know when I'm shooting something in the camera, I know exactly what it's going to look like when it hits my computer. And it's not because I'm psychic, and it's not because I have years of experience. It's a real simple test that you want to do. So tune in next week, and I will show all of you how to do that. I promise. In the meantime, gang, thank you so much for listening. I feel like we just scratched the surface. So again, if you have other questions, I will continue the conversation in the chat or continue it in my Facebook group, the TOGCHAT Photographers group. The link is in the show notes. Check it out. But have a great week. TOGCHAT podcast this week. It'll be coming out Friday. This is something that I wanted to share with you folks. It's honestly a little bit of a follow-up on my conversation with Tracie, on my conversation that I had with Maglosky a few weeks back. And it's all about adding value to your photography. And you don't have to be professional. This applies to all of you that are taking pictures. So I promise you, it'll be a worthwhile listen. You will not feel that you wasted your time. It's not going to be like exciting and sexy, no razzle dazzle, not talking to some cool photographer. But it's some things that I assure you, it will benefit you if you really start to consider it and really start to consider how you want to define value for your work. It'll make a really, really big difference. So as always, gang, stay safe. Go pick up that camera and shoot something because your best shot, it's your next shot. Adios, gang. Hope to see you next week. Take care.